Well, let's continue this conversation with three members of Parliament. Let's go back to the foyer of the House of Commons tonight, where you'll see James Bezan. He's the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence. Jack Harris is the Defence Critic for the official opposition NDP, and Joyce Murray is the Defence Critic for the Liberal Party. Good to see you all again.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks for being with me. We've just heard at length from Canada's Minister of Defence, Mr. Kenny, justifying the government's proposal to expand the military mission against Islamic extremists into Syria. So, Mr. Harris, let me start with you. The Minister of Defence says Canada hasn't advised the UN about our intention to bomb targets in Syria and doesn't feel that's necessary. And he's accusing the opposition of worrying about legal niceties instead of being focused on trying to stop ISIL. What is your response to that?
Well, frankly, what we're worried about is the lack of accountability of this government, going back to the beginning, back in September, being really misled by the Prime Minister about what the nature of the mission was over the fall. We were told about advise and assist for 30 days, then a 6-month mission, including bombing. But supposedly no accompanying the forces, no painting of targets. We found out, of course, that that wasn't true. And now we're talking about what purports to be a one-year mission, but if you listen to the Prime Minister yesterday in the House, it's, you know, in terms of what we're actually doing is, well, we're doing this type of deployment, but it could change, and we're there till the job is done. So we're actually talking about an ongoing permanent mission as long as this government is in power that involves Canadian forces not only in Iraq, but in Syria. And frankly, it's not about legal niceties here. It's about Canada adhering to international law. This is a very dubious legal justification for bombing in another country. The Americans have advanced that as a proposition. Okay. A number of other countries have said, no, we don't go along with that. We don't think that's correct. That's why we're not doing it.
Those other countries, by the way, include France, the UK, Denmark, and Australia.
That's correct.
Joyce Murray, what's your response to the argument that Canada is justified legally, this is the Minister in the government's position, under Article 51 of the UN Charter, in bombing targets in Syria without the permission of the Syrian government?
Well, I think the government has so far failed to make that case, and it's certainly the Prime Minister didn't help his case when he said dismissive things about the legal responsibility Canada has. But really, in some ways, that's a distraction from the key issue, which is that this is an unclear mission with potentially unending drawing Canada into a war in this area. And it's certainly not in the national interest when you have a Prime Minister and a Minister that are unclear about what the objective is.
Okay,
so we don't support it.
We'll come back to some of those points. But Mr. Bezan, should the government be informing the UN, as the United States has done, about its reasons for believing that attacks against ISIL in Syria are justified?
We haven't even passed the motion in the House yet. So once the motion is passed, then we'll look at what the legal ramifications are underneath the UN Charter, Article 51, which is the collective right to self-defense.
But wouldn't it be important to do that when you put the motion, to be able to tell Parliament, we've gone to the UN to tell them this is our intention, and now we're asking you to back
I think that's putting the cart before the horse. I think you want to make sure you have, we requested parliamentary approval of this and to have a fulsome debate, which we're going to start tomorrow. This is something that is incredibly serious to the overall security of Canada, as well as the government of Iraq, who have requested international assistance in eradicating ISIL. As we already said, you can't get at ISIL completely when they're hiding in a safe haven in the unlawful area that they occupy right now in Syria. It's completely, there's no law there. Syria has not done anything to degrade ISIL in any way, shape, or form, and so we have to go in there and target them and weaken them so that they aren't carrying out terrorist activities in Iraq or against us here in Canada.
Mr. Harris, that's part of the government argument, and today it invoked the doctrine of the responsibility to protect countries that can't protect themselves. The NDP supports that, and if you do support that, and I think you do, why do you object to this approach from the government on this mission?
Well, first of all, you know, to say that this parliamentary authorization is required, what the motion actually says is that the Parliament supports the government's authorization, which is already indicated that is given. So, you know, and the idea of seeking the legality or looking at the legality after a motion is passed, that's preposterous, frankly.
The Judge Advocate General has already told the Minister that we have.
That's ridiculous. So that's a ridiculous approach to be taken, and I is obviously trying to paper over what is generally agreed by all the experts to be a very dubious legal proposition. And secondly, the responsibility to protect. None of the legal experts have said that applies in these circumstances as well. So that's just words from the Prime Minister. What we worry about here is that we're now taking ownership of this conflict as a nation. We're the only ones that are planned. We heard some from Cameron that if they win an election, they might go into Syria as well. But, you know, Canada is the only one who's doing the painting of targets by ground troops, engaging in combat. The government seems to be very, very inclined to get involved as much as it can in this war. It's something that I think we can look forward to if this government stays in power to many years of this conflict, because it's not going to be over in a year.
It was a Liberal government that played a key role in developing the international doctrine of the responsibility to protect. Do you believe that applies here?
Well, it doesn't apply. I mean, that takes UN Security Council approval. It takes the government of that country requesting. So that's a non-starter. What Liberal governments, Liberal Party of Canada governments have never shied away from sending our armed forces into combat when it's in the national interest. But that means there needs to be a clear plan, a clear objective, and a responsible plan for carrying it out, and an exit strategy. And in this case, we have none of those. In fact, we have the risk of helping Bashar al-Assad consolidate his power, and this is someone who has terrorized his own citizens. And there is no exit strategy.
But does attacking ISIL in Syria mean Canada is on the side of Bashar al-Assad?
Attacking ISIL in Syria does risk consolidating power of Mr. al-Assad, because I mean, clearly he is fighting the ISIL as well. So there is no exit strategy, and as the minister has said, this could go on for a long time, and he's referred to Afghanistan, and that means 10 years. So this does nothing also to help what is a real instability in the area, and that is the growing humanitarian crisis that is costing countries like Lebanon and Jordan potentially their stability in the region.
Okay, so let me raise that with Mr. Bezan. There are calls from a number of different quarters here that Canada should be stepping up its humanitarian aid to the region. What about that? Has the government got plans to provide more funding?
Yeah, let me first point out to Joyce, and just a reminder that when the Liberals sent our troops into Afghanistan, there was no exit strategy, there was no objectives in place, and they sent them with the wrong kit. So we had to actually get the proper uniforms, proper boots, and proper weapons so they could actually fight.
So you think we shouldn't have gone into Afghanistan?
No, I'm not saying that. I just said it's hypocritical of you and the Liberals to say that you got to have all these things in place when you didn't have it when we sent our troops originally to Afghanistan.
Was it national interest or not?
It was national interest. The same national interest. Just remember that in the case in Afghanistan, we're fighting the Taliban who was perpetrating attacks upon the United States and Canada and all our allies. The same thing is happening with ISIL. It's the same national interest that you have a terrorist organization that's trying to establish a caliphate in Syria and Iraq that want to bring their evil to us here, and they're trying to inspire lone wolf attacks, which we've already witnessed here on Parliament Hill, what we witnessed in St. Jean-sur-le-Chaux, what we've seen in Denmark and France and Australia. So we have to stop them, and that's the responsibility. But it is a whole government approach, Peter. Getting back to your original question, it's a whole government approach. We've already spent $700 million in the region. We're the 5th largest donor in Iraq, the 6th largest donor in Syria. The Canadian taxpayer, via the government of Canada, has been extremely charitable and generous, and we'll continue to support that. And that's what the Prime Minister said yesterday, that we're in this for the long haul, knowing that there is going to be a rebuilding process that's required after this war, and we will be there to support on international development in Iraq and Syria and help those that have been displaced. And then you talked about responsibility to protect. And here you have the NDP and Liberals that love to talk about ending genocides, but then when you have an organization like ISIL committing genocide in the region, they don't want to do anything.
Okay, Mr. Harris, let me have you weigh in on that. And if not the mission that's going to be before Parliament and the debate begins tomorrow, what should Canada be doing instead?
I think that if you look at the coalition, there were 5 lines of activity that developed as part of the military side was only part of it. There's 60 nations in this coalition. Not everybody is doing everything, obviously. We have an amendment that we'll propose tomorrow, which will lay out exactly what we think needs to be done. And we do know that, as Joyce mentioned, the instability in the area, in addition to what ISIL has actually already done, has produced about 4.5 to 5 million internally displaced displaced persons or refugees in other countries.
So will that amendment focus on the humanitarian side?
The humanitarian side, the de-radicalization side, the counter-radicalization, other things that we're not even doing ourselves in our own country. But, you know, slipping around from responsibility to protect to collective defense to they're on pretty shaky ground on the legal side, and the UN is not involved here. So, you know, we have a lot of concern about where Canada is going on this, so Joyce, and what we're getting ourselves
Joyce
into.
Murray, let me finish with you. What should Canada be doing instead?
Well, Canada should be doing more training of Iraqi troops so that they can protect their own people and their territory, and they can fight effectively against ISIS. The parliamentary secretary's comment that we're for doing nothing is one of those kind of schoolyard bullying tactics, frankly, that is beneath a government of the country of Canada. So we have been clear since the beginning that we do support non-combat military activities like training, and we think that there should be a much more robust and comprehensive humanitarian effort on the part of a number of countries, and Canada should really step up on that level to help stabilize the area.
Okay, thank you all. It's a story we'll continue to follow, but I appreciate the time of all three of you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Peter.